Hey everybody, this is Spencer. I'm the host of Constructive Criticism and Limited Time Only, two podcasts about getting better at Magic the Gathering. This week, we're going to talk about Standard. So, it is currently Friday, or no, it's Saturday. Oh wow, it's been a whole week since the first SCG. And people are already talking about Standard and their thoughts on this new Standard format. Which is, if you think about it, kind of crazy that people have already formed opinions about new standards. So the topic of this week is Overreaction Weekend. Or is it an overreaction? So, on this phone, I have some stats and I have things to kind of talk about. We have 32 copies of Smuggler's Copter in the top 8. That is the maximum number of Smuggler's Copters you can have. In that means every deck played 4. And in the top 64, you had an average of over 2 copies of Smuggler's Copter in the entire top 64 of the standard SCG. This is kind of a big deal, kind of not. So, just to kind of look at it, we have 3 major archetypes, in my opinion, that played Smuggler's Copter. We have aggro decks, mid-range decks, and combo-ish decks. So, if we look at the decks that played Smuggler's Copter, you can look at it and say, white-red vehicles. The deck that won the SCG had 4 Smuggler's Copters. It's a huge deal. Then the deck that the Roanoke guys played at this event, they also played Smuggler's Copter in their green-white mid-range aggro decks. Wow! And then you even had a Grixis to merge kind of style deck, so a Grixis Emerge deck, this combo deck with Haunted Dead and Prized Amalgam, also playing Smuggler's Copter. It even played things such as Insolent Neonate and Crypt Breaker to play Smuggler's Copter. So is this a big deal? Is this something that we might need to worry about going into the Pro Tour next week? Probably not. There are already people calling for the banning of Smuggler's Copter. And I think that it's quite a bit of an overreaction. If you think about it, we've had 1 week of Standard. In the week that aggro decks typically do the best, week 1, where people are trying to figure out the format. So sometimes they can find themselves in a position where they really lose to aggro. And Smuggler's Copter kind of rose to the top, especially in an aggro deck. I think that it's too easy to look at the numbers of a 1 week format and say, this card's too good, ban it. And some people even said the only way to beat Smuggler's Copter is to play with other Smuggler's Copters. As you've noticed this week's video is a bit late. The reason for that is actually Pro Tour testing. We have Danny Cathro, Michael Hinderocker, and Casey Bloodworth on our team all going to this Pro Tour. And I can confidently tell you that I don't think one of these people are playing Smuggler's Copter this Pro Tour. Were Smuggler's Copter's decks good in Pro Tour testing? Yeah, they were. I would say that that there were multiple Smuggler's Copter decks that were top 5 decks testing for this Pro Tour. Are any of them playing Smuggler's Copter at the Pro Tour? I don't think so. That could change. But I think that it's so easy to look at 1 week of events and decide that something's broken, that something needs to go, that something needs to change, and put all of your eggs in that basket. But what we need to do is step back and allow the best players in the world to dissect a format and see what they come up with. And then even after the Pro Tour, we still need to give the format time to develop and see how things look. Bank Company was the best deck going into Pro Tour. Shadows of Innistrad. And coming out of that Pro Tour, Green White Tokens was dominant and actually dominated Standard. It was a completely different deck. And then after Pro Tour Eldritch Moon, people thought and continue to believe that Bank Company was the best deck in Standard because of Spell Queller. When in fact, if you talk to a lot of the great players, Temur Merge was probably the best deck. Emrakul decks at large probably were better than the Spellcaller decks, and people just refused to listen and refused to innovate. And that's the thing that we need in Standard. The thing that's going to make these Standard formats great as quick rotations happen that Wizards are presenting is innovation from players. Allowing players to innovate the game and make the game great through new decks and deciding these short rotations make it so that you probably have a better chance of figuring something else out that no one else has figured out. And so for those reasons, I would say, don't overreact to the things that are happening in such a short period of time, such as one Standard event. So, what does Smuggler's Copter do or mean at the Pro Tour? I would guess that Smuggler's Copter does well at the Pro Tour. I would say that it probably doesn't do as well as it did at the first SCG. But the thing is that Smuggler's Copter is colorless. So it's a card that can go into a lot of different decks. It feeds a lot of different strategies. It feeds aggro decks, being this thing that gives all of your creatures pseudo haste. It feeds these synergy decks like this Grixis deck that did well. Because of that, there's a lot of decks that can afford to play Smuggler's Copter, right? It's a colorless card. They can afford to play it. And that's something that you'll look at going into the Pro Tour. But also at the same time, what makes Emrakul worse than it was? What makes Tamiyo worse than it was? What makes some of the great cards that we were already playing worse than they were before? Well, for one, if you look at the events, there are less green decks at large than there were during the last couple of formats. Does this mean aggro is getting better? Yeah, I think it does. I think the aggro is better. Red cards got better at large. Red might have been at almost an unplayable color, just a few weeks ago before Standard came out. And red certainly is not an unplayable color today. And that changes the format. Having an entire color wheel makes the format different enough that certain decks can rise up to the challenge and fight each other, and you have this more of a rock, paper, scissors feel. And that's something that we should remember going into the Pro Tour. And also something you should remember before you call for the banning of something like Smuggler's Copter, which a lot of players are doing. So, is there going to be aggro at the Pro Tour? I think this will be the first Pro Tours in a while that there's aggro. I think that there will be... Here's the thing. I think that the best deck in this format is probably still Temur Emerge. Until somebody figures something else out. And what that means is that there's room for innovation. There's room for people to figure out what is better than Temur Emerge. What is Temur Emerge good against? What do these things mean? And how do they come together? Because I don't think that Smuggler's Copter actually beats those styles of decks. Because it can't deal you damage fast enough before you pull ahead of them and start time walking them. But that doesn't mean that other decks can't do that. And that doesn't mean that they can't be Smuggler's Copter decks. There's a lot of room for innovation. And I hope that everybody calms down. Thinks about Standard a little bit better. I've already seen people say Standard sucks, don't play Standard. And that can't possibly be an opinion that you can form from 1 week of a Standard event. So please, everybody, tone it down and enjoy Magic. Don't forget to check out the podcast on constructivecriticism.com. You can check out Constructive Criticism and Limited Time Only, 2 podcasts about getting better at Magic. This week is a little more opinion-based. Let me know what you think. You can leave a comment, leave a like, leave a dislike. I'm happy to do anything that people see fit. But thank you so much for watching Wednesday Night Warrior. Don't forget to check out mtgotraders.com and Pure MTGO, where this show is hosted. And we'll see you guys all next week after the Pro Tour, where hopefully we can do a deck tech on one of the decks that our teammates play at the Pro Tour. So I look forward to doing that, and I'll see you guys all next time.